Tonight on Dispatches, we investigate the multi-billion-pound fish industry and ask, how much do we really know about the fish sold in Britain's shops and restaurants? We expose serious concerns about the environmental claims of cod on sale in Tesco.
Tesco should remove the product immediately on this basis that they have labelled it incorrectly.
We make our own reformed scampi, revealing the chemicals manufacturers use to bind the fish together. Here we go. Total immersion. Undercover in Bangladesh, we see how some prawns destined for British plates are farmed in waters containing sewage and injected with a liquid to bulk them out. And we uncover how some fish that shoppers imagine to be fresh may actually have been frozen for several months.
9 months.
9 months.
No way.
That's horrific.
Fish is one of the most widely traded commodities in the world. Consumers in the UK spent nearly £6 billion on seafood in 2009. Fish is viewed as a healthy and tasty meal for all the family. But how much do we really know about where our fish comes from, how it's processed, and what's actually in it? Dispatches has been investigating the global fish business for the past 6 months to get answers to these questions. And what we've discovered is that the fish that we're buying in our chippies, our pubs and our supermarkets might not be quite what we think it is. Many of us regularly buy our fish from specialist supermarket counters. The fish is sold on ice like this and often described as fresh. But just how fresh is it? I set up my own fresh fish counter based on one at an Asda store near where I live. I wanted to find out what people expect when they shop at a counter like this. When you go and buy your fish at a counter like this, what does fresh mean to you?
It means fresh, literally just killed it.
Fresh means it's something that's just been taken out of the sea. That's fresh.
Do you assume it's all fresh?
I would assume when I first see it, yeah.
But at the Asda store near me, some of the fish on sale at the fresh fish counter has previously frozen written in the small print on the label. Do you ever read the small print?
No, I just go for what looks nice.
Let's have a look at the small print here. On this one on the River Cobbler, down the bottom, what does it say there?
Previously frozen.
And over here with the cod line, what is it saying there?
Is previously frozen.
But it's now, if it's previously frozen,
That is basically telling you that it's really not fresh.
I don't call that fresh fish. In my opinion, it shouldn't be on this counter.
Right.
Especially as I got my cup of glasses on to read that.
I wouldn't notice that it says previously frozen. I'll just look at the big handwriting that I see right now. Fresh fish.
Most people told me they would not expect fish on sale at a counter like this to have been previously frozen. The majority also said they'd be unlikely to spot the small print. Some consumer campaign groups believe that the way this fish is being sold by Asda may be misleading. Jenny Driscoll is a spokeswoman for which?
When people go to the fresh fish counter in the supermarket, you're actually thinking, right, okay, I'm going to buy something that isn't frozen. And you don't want to have to search in the small print to find out what you're actually getting.
We asked Asda about the way they sell fish on their fresh fish counter. They said the fresh fish sign at the store near me was not ideal, but they're in the process of removing these signs. They added that the overwhelming majority of the fish they sell is fresh and that previously frozen fish is clearly labelled at the point of sale. At fish counters at Tesco, we also found may have been previously frozen on the small print of labels. They were close to conspicuous signs on the counter advertising fresh fish. Tesco told us that if fish has been previously frozen, it's made clear on individual labels on the counter. The generic fresh fish sign makes customers aware they can buy loose fresh fish rather than canned or pre-packaged fish on the counters. There's nothing wrong with freezing fish, but customers want to know what they're buying. And many would be surprised to know just how long their fish may have been frozen for. Take fish fingers. We get through about 1 million a day. The way they're manufactured reveals the truly industrial nature of the fish trade. That process uses the international currency of the frozen fish business, 7.5 kilogram fish blocks. Traded across the world and internet, fish blocks are a multi-billion pound industry. We got hold of some blocks to have a closer look at them. These are 7.5 kilogram blocks of fish. Take a look at this. Somewhat different, I think you'll agree, to the way fish looks either on your supermarket shelf or at your fishmongers, but this, believe me, is how fish gets traded around the world. Our blocks were minced fish. That means they're made from scraps left over after the fish has been filleted. Minced fish is what goes into cheaper fish fingers. Millions of fish mince and fish fillet blocks come to the UK, mainly from Northern and Eastern Europe. Many travel thousands of miles via China, where it's cheaper to make them. And this is where most arrive. Grimsby. Some do not go straight to processors to be made into fish fingers, fish cakes and other products for us to eat. Instead, these blocks, along with other types of fish, are often kept in frozen storage. Grimsby was once a famous fishing port, but in today's world of international fish trading, it's reinvented itself as one of the cold storage capitals of Europe.
Well, Alex, we need to go in the cold store now, mate, so if you can kindly don a hard hat.
Health and safety. Mike Smith has been running a cold store for the last few years.
How cold is it in there today?
Well, we're running about -26.
Right.
He rents storage space to fish merchants who buy and sell, hoping to make money on the deals. It can be big business.
A container of blocks will come into us for one customer, but will go out on another customer because it's been sold with it while it's been within storage. You could have a block in that might exchange hands 2 or 3 times within their life of that block in the store, you know, until it goes to the processors.
Mike Smith says the conditions in his cold store are carefully monitored to make sure the quality of the fish is preserved.
The thing about a fish product is it gets what they're known as freezer burn. It turns to cardboard, and it's no good to man the beast.
But deciding how long fish can be kept in a cold store is left up to those working in the industry. Surprisingly, the law doesn't specify how long fish can be stored for. Malcolm Kane has been a leading food technologist for 30 years.
What the regulations do is simply state that food must be fit for human consumption if it's going to be sold. It could be in cold storage for 3 months, for 6 months, for 9 months, for 15 months, and in all of those conditions, and in all of those situations, it can be perfectly adequate and perfectly safe to eat.
It may be adequate from a legal perspective, but some fish that has been in cold storage for several months is defrosted and sold to consumers in packets in non-frozen sections of the supermarket. The small print on the back of the packet often tells you the product may have been previously frozen. But back out on the streets, I asked punters what they expect from this kind of supermarket fish. In the chilled section, you get fish like this packaged up. We've taken the labelling off it. Fish like that. Would you assume that is fresh?
I would assume something like that was fresh.
If it had been frozen, how long would they freeze the chilled fish for before it hits the supermarket shelves, do you think?
A week, I would like to think. They freeze it at sea, bring it here, and it's about a week from billowing waves to my plate.
And if I told you that it could be anything up to 9 months?
That's not a fish fillet, that's a child that you get if you give it 9 months. That's horrific.
9 months.
9 months?
You joking?
I'm not joking.
9 months.
9 months.
No way.
That's not good. That's disgusting. I wouldn't eat that if I knew it had been frozen for 9 months. No.
Consumer campaigners want shoppers to be given more information about what happens to our fish between the ocean and the plate.
We want to know when the fish was caught, what kind of journey it's been on from the water to the supermarket shelf. Why not tell us as shoppers? Why not be upfront?
Shops and fish merchants justify keeping fish in cold stores for months because it means they've always got fish if there's a shortage in supply or if shoppers want to buy more.
The stocks are needed in order to be able to satisfy the peaks and troughs of demand. Because if they disappoint their customers will go elsewhere.
The sheer volume of fish stored and traded across the UK means it can be difficult for the authorities to regulate all the cold stores and suppliers properly.
Does it get recorded as well? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Joanna Riddell is in charge of checking that food businesses in the West Lindsey district of Lincolnshire meet required hygiene standards. In the summer of 2008, she was tipped off about a cold storage and fish processing company. After inspecting the premises, she was amazed to discover fish that had been there for half a decade.
When we actually looked within the cold stores, there was food that went back that had a use-by date of 2003. So obviously it was several years old. And I noticed that there was a number of rat droppings in the building, which led me to believe that there was an infestation of rats. The smell was absolutely horrendous. And one pallet did have some fish with a number of maggots on there. They were actually deep frozen.
The premises were housing fish for human consumption alongside fish byproducts for animal feeds. Joanna obtained a condemnation order for all of the 200 tonnes of stock inside. It was one of the largest destructions of its kind ever in the UK. The company was called Alan Rich Seafoods. For obvious public health reasons, the authorities tried to recall all products that had gone through these premises. But the company's record keeping was poor, so it's highly unlikely the recall was 100% successful. Is it possible that some of these products are still out there?
Quite clearly, if those records were incomplete, there could still be products out there.
The authorities did manage to identify around 50 food businesses which had been supplied over the previous 2 years with fish from Alan Rich's premises.
Well, it did open my eyes that there is a lot of movement of fish, and that's why traceability is so critical, and making sure that we know where the food's come from, where it's going to, so that, we can protect the public.
The council launched a prosecution against Alan Rich and its owner, Roland Saldana. Last October, Saldana and the company were found guilty of 21 breaches of food hygiene and animal byproduct regulations. Saldana was given a suspended prison sentence. Lincolnshire Council's Trading Standards Department has just had its budget cut in half. Increasingly, inspectors admit they depend on traders to police themselves.
We can't be there all the time, so we do rely on food business operators to manage their own businesses effectively.
In part 2, we reveal serious concerns about the environmental claims of cod on sale in Tesco.
Tesco should remove the product immediately on this basis that they have labelled it incorrectly.
We've been investigating the fish sold on Britain's high street. So far, we've seen how it can be frozen for months before it even reaches our plates. Now we're going to ask if the fish we buy is always what the shop says it is. Fish and chips, one of our national dishes. There are around 10,000 chippies in the UK, which sell over 250 million portions every year. For many, there's nothing better than a portion of cod and chips, but we've discovered that some of this cod may not be quite what it seems. To find out more, we had to travel to an unexpected location, landlocked Worcester. John Dell works for Trading Standards at Worcestershire County Council. A couple of years ago, his department received a complaint from a lady who'd ordered cod and chips from a local shop.
She didn't think that what she bought was cod. So she went back to the fish and chip shop and they said, don't be so silly, it's cod, go away. She still wasn't happy, so she gave us a piece of the cod that she'd kept back for us.
John's team got the fish tested using DNA analysis. It wasn't cod at all, but a type of catfish called Pangasius. Pangasius is a river fish, mainly farmed here in the Mekong Delta in Vietnam. One species is known as Vietnamese river cobbler.
That's not a problem if a fish and chip shop wants to sell river cobbler, as long as they sell it as river cobbler. But we don't like to see the public being ripped off by calling one species another, especially when it's cheaper.
Pangasius can be half the wholesale price of cod. A fish and chip shop selling Pangasius priced as cod could illegally double its profits. John's team began investigating fish and chip shops across Worcestershire. As a result, 4 shops have now been prosecuted for passing off Pangasius as cod. Each was found guilty of breaching trading laws, fined thousands of pounds, and ordered to pay legal costs. I'm surprised by the level of the fines here. Several £1,000s. That's quite serious, isn't it?
Let's face it, cod and chips is the traditional British meal, isn't it? I think the magistrates took a very dim view of cod and chips being tampered with.
This was an affront to the national culture.
Absolutely.
Worcestershire is not the only place where this trick is being pulled. There have been similar prosecutions in other counties. And last year, the consumer campaign group Which accompanied food inspectors to restaurants across the UK.
One of the managers actually said to our researcher, oh, I actually don't always use cod. Sometimes I'll replace it with a type of catfish. And we were just astonished that he would actually admit that, because it's just clear case of misleading people.
In recent times, products sold as cod have accounted for over 1/10 of all seafood bought by British consumers. So dispatches wanted to see how widespread this type of cod mislabelling might be. We called in an expert to help us design an experiment to find out. Dr. Stefano Mariani is a fish population geneticist. He explained how he could test samples of cod to see if they really are cod using a DNA database of the world's fish species. Can you be sure that if it suggests something is cod, it really is cod?
Cod is probably the most famous fish in the world, and it has been studied by biologists for over a century. So if we talk about cod, we can be absolutely dead certain that we won't make mistakes.
So off we went to collect our samples for Dr. Mariani to test. Over the second half of last year, we visited 40 independent fish and chip shops across England and Wales and bought battered cod from each. Over the same period, we also bought products labelled as cod from the 3 biggest fish sellers in the UK, Tesco, Sainsbury's and Asda. In order to obtain DNA sequences for our products, Dr. Mariani instructed us in a scientifically accepted procedure for providing him with samples. We followed all his instructions to the letter. The important thing is to make sure that you get a sample right in the middle of the fish. Then we go to our test tube, pop it in, just like that. And that will go off to be carefully, painstakingly analysed, and will tell us if the fish is the same as they said the fish was inside the batter. Simple. When I went to find out our results from Dr. Mariani, first I asked about the fish and chip shops. We put through a sample of 40 products from fish and chip shops, all of them purporting to be cod. Were they all cod?
They were nearly all cod.
Ah.
And there were a couple of exceptions. One was haddock. On another occasion, we found the famous Pangasius.
That's the catfish farmed in Vietnam, which fish and chip shops can buy for around half the wholesale price of cod. It's like a rule, like a measuring. Right. Then we turned our attention to the results from Britain's 3 biggest supermarkets. Knowing supermarkets label their fish correctly is important, because they often like to make claims about sustainability in fishing methods. All of the 15 results for Asda cod products matched what was written on the label. 20 of the 21 results from Sainsbury's also matched the labels. However, one fish bought from the counter of a store in South London was not cod but haddock. Sainsbury's told us that they are confident this was an isolated case of human error and that the haddock was labelled wrongly either when it was put out on the counter or when it was selected for purchase. Finally, we looked at the 21 results we got from Tesco samples.
When it came to the Tesco samples, well, almost a fifth appeared to be wrongly labelled, didn't they?
We had 4 samples out of 21 that were labelled as Pacific cod, but when we analysed those samples, they were actually Atlantic cod.
What's the difference then between Pacific cod and North Atlantic cod?
They are officially 2 different species found in different areas of the world. One is in the North Pacific Basin, one is in the North Atlantic Basin.
All these 4 cases of mislabelling at Tesco related to one particular product. We bought each at different times and different branches, as far apart as London and Perth. Each was labelled in exactly the same way: breaded cod fillets caught in the Pacific Ocean, China. They were all, in fact, Atlantic cod.
It is incredibly unlikely that accidentally a wandering cod from the Atlantic could be possibly found in China. Simple answer, I do not believe that any Atlantic cod can be found in Chinese waters.
So why does the species of cod matter? Well, the answer is sustainability. Many stocks of the Atlantic cod have been overfished and are endangered, whereas stocks of the Pacific cod remain largely plentiful. So, if the country's biggest supermarket is selling one fish as the other, then its customers simply cannot make an informed environmental choice. Melissa Pritchard is a marine biologist and campaigns for sustainable fishing.
If you were going to generalise, you would say Pacific cod is more sustainable than the Atlantic. There are about 11 stocks of Atlantic cod, and most of them aren't doing so brilliantly. Comparatively in the Pacific, there's only a few stocks and most of them are doing quite well.
Her organisation believes this Tesco product may contravene labelling laws.
If the cod actually comes from the Atlantic rather than the Pacific as it's labelled, that's very shocking and it will mislead the consumer.
Most people wanting to buy environmentally friendly fish in the supermarkets rely on specific declarations on the packaging, just like the responsibly sourced claim on this same Tesco product.
If the label is incorrect in terms of where the fish was caught, then that cannot be argued as responsibly sourced. Tesco should remove the product immediately on this basis that they have labelled it incorrectly.
Tesco told us it prides itself on the clarity and accuracy of the information it gives to customers. Unfortunately, on this occasion, we were provided with incorrect information by our supplier. This has now been rectified, and we are sorry for the error. They added, "We source cod from the Atlantic and Pacific across our range and are absolutely confident that both always come from responsibly managed fisheries. All our fish is fully traceable, so the labelling error does not affect our sustainability commitments." We don't just buy our fish from supermarkets. Hundreds of millions of pounds worth of seafood is purchased every year in our pubs and restaurants. A famous dish on the menu is scampi. But what actually is scampi? These creatures, Dublin Bay prawns, a species caught in European waters. To make the traditional product, their tails are coated in breadcrumbs. But in many pubs, you'll be served the budget model, reformed scampi. Under the guidance of food technologist Malcolm Kane, I set out to show how this is manufactured. The core ingredient is the leftover meat from the whole tails of Dublin Bay prawns. Now, we can't replicate the industrial process of turning these prawns into this scampi, but we can show you, broadly speaking, what happens. So, Malcolm, what exactly is reformed scampi?
Reformed scampi, it's what it says on the tin. It's scampi pieces and fragments that are reformed into something that approaches the appearance of the premium product.
Cheap end of the market.
The inexpensive end of the market.
After amassing a pile of scrap meat to make my scampi core, we came to a surprising ingredient requiring some unexpected kitchen accessories.
And here it is, ladies and gentlemen, sodium tripolyphosphate. We're clearly not going to, and nobody's going to eat it in this form, but it does say, ingestion of large quantities may cause irritation, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, bluish-purple discoloration of skin, decreased blood pressure, decreased heart rate, coma.
Well, this is a food ingredient, but it's not a kitchen ingredient. It's an industrial chemical, and it can be a severe irritant.
Soaking the scraps of prawn meat in a solution of sodium tripolyphosphate helps to bind them together and hold in water. I put the soaked prawn meat into some DIY scampi moulds to be frozen.
I've waited 25 years in television to say the immortal words. Here's one we prepared earlier. In they go to our battered solution. Give them a good stir around that. Give them all good old covering in breadcrumbs. The fryer's fired up, and in we go. One batch, reformed scampi.
Try one myself.
Not bad at all. Okay, well, look at that. Quite honestly, it'd be quite hard to tell the difference between that and a top-of-the-range piece of scampi tail.
If you're keen to know what other seafood products in the UK contain phosphates, look out for other types of prawns and our old friend Pangasius on sale at fishmongers and wholesalers. The soaking of these products in phosphates often takes place at factories in Asia, where a lot of our fish is now processed. Sometimes tumbling machines like these in Vietnam are used. Phosphate soaking helps to preserve fish and shellfish for longer, and consumers are protected from any health risks by a legal limit on the amount which can be used. But because phosphates add water into fish, they're also a way for manufacturers to save themselves money by selling you more water and less fish. We inspected the packaging of some supermarket scampi products containing phosphates to determine the amount of scampi you actually get. First, we looked at Asda Scampi Mini Bites.
So if we turn it over, what it says, this product is a scampi and white fish blend with added water. The added water phrase means it's got more than 10% added water. The total fish content is 37%. Then there's brackets saying scampi 47%, white fish 45%. So the scampi content of this is 47% of 37%, so it's about 18%.
But actually, a more honest description would be Asda mostly not scampi bites. Only 18% of it is scampi.
Factually, that is correct.
Sea Spray Whole-Tailed Scampi, available at various high street supermarkets, advertises its health benefits, but check the small print again, and you find only about a third of the product is actually shellfish. You'd also be forgiven for thinking the name guarantees you a single juicy whole prawn tail under your breadcrumbs.
If I see that, I think I'm buying a whole tail of scampi, right?
I can understand you thinking that, but the description would have to be single whole tails of scampi coated in for your interpretation to be correct.
Well, this is wonderful. So legally you can say it's whole tails of scampi when it's actually bits of tails of scampi.
There's a restriction as to the size, etc., but technically, yes.
In part 3, we travel to Asia to expose the conditions in which prawns heading for British plates are being farmed.
ওজন বাড়াচ্ছে 1 কেজি মাছ কিনলি 1 কেজি 200 হচ্ছে
Dispatches has been investigating the fish industry. Increasingly, the seafood we eat comes from overseas. Imports have roughly doubled in the last decade and now make up around 70% of all the seafood we consume. What you and I would know as king or tiger prawns were once an exotic delicacy, but today around 50,000 tons pour into the UK each year, mainly from the warm waters of Latin America and Asia. Dhaka, capital of Bangladesh. In recent times, the country has supplied thousands of tons of prawns to the UK each year. Most end up in restaurants and smaller shops across Britain. I've come here to see what happens to some of these prawns on their way to our plates.
Well, I'm on my way now to meet a woman who's been a close observer of the fishing industry here in Bangladesh for many years now. She believes there are significant problems with the prawn farming and production business in this country, and she thinks British consumers should know about them. Kushi, how do you do? Kushi Kabir has been running a charity in Bangladesh for 20 years, which works with local communities in areas where the prawn industry is established. She believes the industry is dangerously unregulated.
There's over 200,000 hectares of land under shrimp aquaculture. It's impossible to trace where your shrimp is coming from. And it's also impossible to ensure that everybody who's doing the shrimp farming are following the rules that they're supposed to follow. It's not possible to do that.
Prawns are one of Bangladesh's largest exports. The industry is controlled by powerful business interests with strong connections to the authorities. We were warned our reporting might not be welcomed. To avoid raising suspicion, I stayed in Dhaka and we sent an undercover team out to investigate. They decided to follow the supply chain from start to finish. In Bangladesh, prawns originate in thousands of different ponds where they're farmed. Then they're often bought by middlemen traders and sold on to processing factories. Finally, they're exported to the UK and other countries. First, our team travelled to some of the ponds around the city of Khulna at the beginning of this chain. This is Bangladesh's largest prawn production region. But hygiene is not what you would hope. The team found latrines filled with raw sewage draining into canals next to prawn ponds. As it's tidal, water from the canals flows both into and out of the prawn ponds at every tide, carrying the sewage with it. Nearby, our team approached a man who's been farming for 20 years to ask about his methods. He told us he had big problems with disease in his prawns and poured a chemical named thiodine into the water to control it. We've disguised his identity.
পরিমাণ মতন সব জায়গায় যেতে পড়ে সমানভাবে সেই রকম পাবে
Thiodine is a pesticide containing a substance called endosulfan that is banned in over 50 countries around the world, including the EU. Endosulfan is widely agreed to be a toxic pollutant to the environment. Ingestion in large quantities is linked to numerous human health risks, such as paralysis and birth defects. In Bangladesh, its use is supposed to be controlled. However, the farmer didn't appear to know about any risks nor any regulation.
নিয়মকানুনটা ওটা ঠিক বলতে পারবো না আসে না কখনো কেউ পরিদর্শনের জন্য কেউ আসে না
This fitted with our discovery that Bangladeshi prawns have had problems with banned chemicals. These have frequently been found in shipments to the UK in recent years. After prawns are grown in ponds in Bangladesh, they're often bought by middlemen traders. One, who worked in the industry for 40 years, told us many of his colleagues inject prawns with a bulking liquid to increase their weight. He showed us how it's done. He feared recriminations for exposing this, so we've not identified him. He estimated that 70% of prawns in the surrounding areas are treated like this. The team then travelled to a prawn auction about 20 miles outside Khulna. Middlemen sometimes buy and sell prawns at places like this before they reach processing factories which export to the UK. The team spoke to one who'd been trading at this auction for a year. He explained there is no effective system for tracing prawns back to where they're farmed. Again, we've hidden his face.
না ওরকম কোনো হিসাব নাই মানে যে মাছগুলো কিনি কোনো এলাকার মাছ আলাদা আলাদা করে রাখা হয় না টোটাল মাছ সব একসঙ্গে মিলে আর কি রাখা হয় বা একসঙ্গে বিক্রি করা হয়
What he said shows that the factories exporting prawns to the UK, which he supplies, ultimately have little idea about which farms provide their prawns, and therefore about what conditions are like on those farms.
মানে ডিপো ফ্যাক্টরিতে মাছ নিয়ে গেলে তারা আর কি বলে না যে কোন জায়গার মাছ শুনতে চায় না কোথাকার মাছ
At this auction, there again appeared to be serious hygiene problems. Prawns being washed in well water, swarms of flies on unrefrigerated produce, a stray dog wandering around chewing on bits of prawns. Dispatches discovered another alarming aspect of the prawn industry in Bangladesh. Exports are big business, and many locals here have complained of being forcibly evicted from their land to make way for prawn farms. Kushi Kabir has long campaigned against the industry because of these kinds of abuses.
The human rights violations have been enormous, and the impunity of people who can get away with this has led to this being one of the most worst and the most violent industries I have ever seen.
Our undercover team went to meet a family. The father described how his entire village was evicted when a group of men turned up.
40-50 জন আসে রাতের বেলায় টলার যোগে এসে উঠে আমাদের মারধর করে তাড়িয়ে দেয় বা বিভিন্নভাবে হয়রানি বা হুমকি দেয় দিয়ে তারা দখল করে নেয়
He said these men destroyed the villagers' livelihoods by flooding the land with salt water for prawn farming.
জমিতে ধান পান কেটে নিয়ে যায় এবং পুরা জমিটাই তলিয়ে দেয় এবং পরে বাধা দিতে গেলে তারা মারপিট বা বিভিন্ন হুমকি দেখায়
He said that since last March, he's been living on a small piece of land and has struggled to feed his family properly. He told us he's been threatened with death if he tries to reclaim his land. We established that prawn farms in this area are part of the supply chains of processing factories in Khulna which export to the UK. Back in the capital, Dhaka, I watched some of the footage that our team had collected in the field. It left me with some serious questions about eating prawns from Bangladesh. Watching this footage, you realise how little we know about where the prawns we eat have come from. And without proper traceability, it's impossible to work out what may have happened to them on their long journey from the farmer to your dinner plate. And it's difficult to see how the conditions under which these prawns are produced and traded meet European standards of food safety and hygiene. The Bangladeshi authorities insist improvements have been made to all aspects of the prawn industry in recent times, in particular with regards to the food safety and traceability standards of the country's larger export companies. There is also external regulation of prawns and other seafood imported into the UK from countries like Bangladesh. It's overseen by the European Commission, which is responsible for deciding which countries are fit to export to the EU. I went to meet Michael Scannell, who heads up the key office.
Well, it basically works on the premise that all imports of fish and fishery products have to be safe and have to provide equivalent levels of safety as compared to fish caught, produced, processed and sold on the European markets.
Michael Scannell's office audits the authorities in exporting countries and in the past has banned imports from Bangladesh.
The south of the country.
But when a country is exporting to the EU, the system relies heavily on local authorities to police their own seafood production. And our investigation shows that in Bangladesh the authorities are not policing the prawn supply chain effectively.
why doesn't the EU directly regulate? Say, look, if you're going to send your fish to us, we demand rights of inspection directly wherever we choose.
It's unrealistic. There are something of the order of 60,000, 70,000 establishments that are approved to export to the European Union. We couldn't realistically inspect each and every one of them unless we employed armies of inspectors.
Seafood entering the UK is policed by British authorities too. This is Southampton. All fish and shellfish arriving from outside the EU at ports like this have to be signed off as fit to eat. Inspectors here check the paperwork of every consignment and physically inspect some of the fish or shellfish in up to half of them. But full physical inspection and laboratory testing of the huge volume of fish arriving here is clearly impossible, once again because of the time and the resources it would take. Sandra Westacott is Chief Inspector.
If we inspected and sampled every consignment, it would have a massive impact on business. We literally wouldn't get products on the shelves.
Instead, extra checks are carried out on a risk assessment basis.
We are using the best intelligence and information that we have to settle on an appropriate, a sensible, a safe sampling regime for public safety.
Prawns arriving from Bangladesh are currently subject to extra inspections and laboratory tests for banned chemicals. But those chemicals do not include endosulfan, which we found a prawn farmer using in his pond outside Kulna. What's more, only a sample of prawns from each shipment is actually tested. The effectiveness of sample testing is limited if the prawns have come from a large number of different untraceable farms, such as we found in Bangladesh.
A negative result tells you that the contaminant is absent in the sample, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's absent in the rest of the consignment that the sample has been taken from.
In the UK, we now consume billions of pounds and hundreds of thousands of tons of seafood a year, and the industry is increasingly trumpeting the health and green credentials of this. So it's never been more important for those who check, manufacture and sell us fish to make sure it's inspected, labelled and processed in the right way. And what our investigation shows is that some of the UK's fish retailers, suppliers and restaurants have got work to do on these fronts. It's clear we sometimes don't know enough about the journey that fish takes to our plates. And until that changes, British consumers cannot always be confident about the freshness, the quality and the sustainability of the fish that they're eating.
Now, how much do you know about the issues raised in this film? Take our quick quiz online to find out. Go to channel4.com/dispatches. 9 o'clock tomorrow night, Channel 4, it's Gordon Ramsay and the shocking shark fishing industry, shark bait. You need to see it.